All right, for this part of the review, we're looking a little bit more into built-in variables, colors, buttons, sliders, different DOM objects, and actually really kind of practicing delving deeper into the references so that we can do more with our code. A lot of times it's not really apparent how to do something, and we have to kind of keep delving down and testing things out until we can get what we want. Okay, so for this one, yes, we want to practice with built-in variables for positioning, and we've done that. And we're also going to be kind of going into DOM objects, and so I'll be kind of discussing that. The main thing that we're going to be doing, that I'll be covering in this video, is different ways that we can affect the button, the slider, and a color picker. Okay, all right, so let's jump into it. Let's go to P5.js. Get in there. So I want to open up the editor, and I want to open up the reference. Okay, now the other thing that I know we're going to end up having to use is W3 schools. JavaScript is not just a coding language just for like making games and doing stuff that we've been doing, but it's a browser language. It's meant to help increase functionality for web pages. So we will need to have a resource, which is W3 Schools, that we can use to try to research different things and affect our DOM objects and stuff using CSS. And so we have to use JavaScript to kind of link that up. Okay? All right, so let's look at DOM objects real quick. So if we go down to DOM, any one of these, okay, is a DOM object. So let's just kind of review. We're going to start with a slider. This is one of maybe the hardest ones to kind of play with because it doesn't want to operate. Okay, a slider, we can have a start value, we have an end value, we can have how fast it's incrementing for us to see. And then we see that they all have these different methods attached to them, okay? Now with the slider, we can also pull certain values. So we got to see where all that comes from. Where is that magic happening? Okay, so if we scroll down and look really at the syntax, we can see how we can create that, okay, what the parameters are. But this is what I want you guys to key in on. It returns a P5 element, okay? So if we go looking back at that DOM, this P5 element. I could be in the slider and actually click on it to the P5 element to understand it, but what is this P5 element? It is, basically it's an object, okay, that is created when we create a canvas or graphics, or if we are creating a div, an image, a slider, a button, a color picker, any of that stuff, we create a P5 element. And there are certain things that we have a hold of. We could access the ELT to find out how that's designed in CSS. So this is a field we could use. We can click on any one of these to get a little bit more details. Okay, so see the canvas. We could store that as a variable. Then we could access the ELT and the style and then do a border so that we could have a border around our canvas. Okay, all of this stuff is just ways that we can have more control over what we create. Now, every P5 element has certain methods or functions that were created. We can attach to parents, we can give it an ID, a class, which these all may be useful if we need to start doing some custom CSS to it. Every P5 element has certain events that we can link up and set up so that if we click on that event or we hover over that, that item, the slider, we can have it do certain things like color a certain way, have a hover effect. Most of the time, like when we were doing a button, we were having the mouse press and we had to link it with a custom function. Okay, so if we went into this, we can see how it's usually linked up. We can link up with any P5 element, this, and that's basically we're attaching an event listener. And when that listener occurs, then we can fire a custom function, okay, to do things. This gives us more functionality. So when we're looking, we have different event stuff, But we also have other things like adding things to a class, removing things from a class, toggling a class on and off, seeing what specific text it might have, or what the inner HTML element is. All of these are things that just help improve our functionality. The style, we can attach specific CSS properties, so we can take an attribute that we want to attach to a button or a slider and then give it certain values or find out what those values are. Okay. We have other things. These right here where we can do specific things. We can pull the value, and we do use that for the slider. We can choose to show it or hide it, adjust the size of it. We can do the position, which we've seen that before, okay? So all of these are things that we can do. So that we're gonna first start off with a slider, okay? So let's create, I'm just gonna call it, I don't know, P slider, and I need to first create it. So now the big thing is that we always have to have a variable to hold on to this DOM object when we create it so that we can access all of that stuff. Otherwise, it's what we would call like an anonymous object. I don't have control over it. Okay, so this P slider, we're going to do create slider, just like what we've seen. Now, it has specific values. It has a start value. It has an end value. Okay, and then I can choose like how I want it to increment up. Okay, and as soon as I create that, there it is. There's my slider. Now, it's not really doing anything. I can choose to change the position of it. Slider.position, accessing those different functions. And if I'm going too fast, remember, you guys can pause, you guys can rewind, use the arrow keys to rewind by 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever you need to understand and be able to use this references. But what I want to do is I am going to go through and I want to design this. I want to change the color of this slider. I want to give it a different position. So I'm going to position this, let's say 50 on the X, 50 on the Y. There we go. There's my slider. But, you know, I want my slider to be able to affect the color of the background. So I'm going to do P slider dot value. Okay, and now it's coloring. Now, if I wanted it to color more, then I got to actually use this and treat this like a color channel. Smallest value is 0, largest value is 255. Okay, now I have my slider, and this is coloring my channels. But these sliders, they look very generic. This is the generic type of slider. I want to be able to change the slider, customize it. So let's see what we can see in here about a slider. Let's do this. Okay. We want to find a slider. There's a slider. Okay. This is really what a slider is. It's an input type range, and we give it a min and a max value. Okay, so this is what it is. Now, there is, I know I've seen it on here. Ways that we can customize it, but while we're thinking about it, let's go ahead and start logging some console code so we can actually start delving down. Now, using that elt, let's see what that looks like, elt. Okay, this is what it looks like in HTML. We have our min, we have our max, we have our style, position, absolute, and it gives it that position. Okay, what I just did right here. Okay. This is saying that it's a slider, but we want to be able to try to affect the color, okay? Now, I'll tell you one of the things that if you play with this and you're looking through W3 schools, you'll find it's very difficult to try to design the slider. Custom slider. Let's see. One of these will show, see, yep, okay, square, round, images, that's the default. So let's look at these and see what's different. Okay, now this is using CSS, Okay, so if we are looking at what these sliders are, here's the default slider right here. Here's the custom slider. Okay, now what it has is it has a class attached to it, and that class is doing certain things. So when I hover over it, I'm hovering over it, what happens? It is changing the opacity a little bit. Okay, the slider has a pseudo class for this thumb right here that is having specific designs. And when I hover over it, see now the default slider doesn't do anything, but when I hover over this, I got a pointer, okay? That is CSS design. So we have the basic slider, and then we have the basic thumb part of the slider, and we have the slider itself. Now, through a lot of trial on my part, the issue that we have with sliders, and if you do a lot of research with it, it doesn't want to do anything until we tell it not to display the default settings. And that's where appearance none comes in, okay? And then after we do that, then we can start doing different things, okay? So the takeaway from this is we see that they created a class, okay, which is so what we need to do. And then we need to do some custom design for it. Okay, so let's go back to the P5 element and look how we can add a class, because that was on here. I talked about it. There we go. Add class. Add a specified class. So let's look in there. We can add a class and name the class, okay, to whatever P5 element we want. Okay, so I'm going to first do that. I'm going to go to my P slider, and I'm going to add class, and let's call it custom slider. Okay, so now we have a custom class added to that. If I look here in my console for the alt, I can see that there's a class. Now we have that custom slider. So now we are in business. Now we can actually start to do stuff with that. So now we're going to actually go into our CSS. Okay, so for every sketch, we have our index file, which is telling us what files and scripts we need to run. We have our sketch, which historically that's where we've been writing our code. And now we got the style sheet that we're actually going to go ahead and start playing around with. Again, using examples and trial and error from what we find on W3 schools and what we can find in the references. Okay, so I'm going to call my class. So this is going to be very similar to how we're writing right here. So we're calling a class by the dot product. So we're going to say dot custom slider, and I need to write it exactly the same. And then I'm going to write my rules. So the first thing that I'm going to do is appearance none. Okay, now that already took away the color. So now we're starting to be in business. So let's increase the height of it, make it a little bit thicker. Maybe let's try 50 pixels. See what that looks like. Hey, there we go. Let's go ahead and round our borders, and we start from the top left and work our way around. So I want to give some values. If the value goes up to half of what the height or the width is, then it ends up being like a perfect circle. So if this was 25 pixels for all of them, excuse me, it's not border, it's border radius. And then we get kind of like this look, okay? And that's doing 25 pixels, but that is applying to everyone. If I wanted it to only apply to one, and then maybe I wanted 0 and 0 and maybe another 25 pixels, we can get some crazy looking stuff for a slider. We could have it maybe 25 pixels and 0, and I mean that just looks kind of cool. Okay, so that's my border radius. Maybe I want to try to change the background and give it a different color. So let's go on, just throw on something, but I use a color picker just so I can find some colors. Let's make it, let's do that color. So that's the color that I want to add. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to add that color. So we want to write technically RGB to do this. Okay, so there we go. We got a color, we got a height, we got a border radius. Now we need to adjust that thumb. So I'm going to go look back at that code, see what they do. They're doing 2 colons. So this is doing like a pseudo class, so it doesn't exist all the time. And then we need to write this WebKit/slider/thumb. So that's what I want to get to be able to attach to the thumb slider. So it's dot custom slider, 2 colons, and then this. All right, now, first thing I got to do is appearance, none. And now let's increase the height, 50 pixels. Let's see what that does. Okay, so it didn't give it to us yet. We need to make sure that it's still showing that default one. That's the thing. WebKit. Nope. Did I spell appearance wrong? Let's see if we can take off the WebKit and get it there. We're really just playing around with this. We want to get it to work. So I'm going to keep trying stuff, knowing that the appearance has to change. Customs. Oh, here's the issue. I did not type my class correctly. Oh, there we go. Appearance is gone. Okay, now let's change the background color. Let's change the background color. Let's give it, I don't know, I'm going to do it purple. Let's give this as the color. Okay. I got my height. Let's do my width. 10 pixels. There we go. There's my slider. That looks kind of crazy, right? Okay, maybe I want it a little bit thicker, and I actually want it to be a little bit longer or higher than the other one. So let's do that. There we go. Okay, and then I wanted to put a border radius on this one too, so I can kind of have it matched like that weird shape. Border radius. So top left, I'm going to do 30 pixels, 0, 30 pixels, and 0. With a semicolon. There we go. That's kind of my cool shape. It's changing the color. Okay. All right. So that is the slider. Okay. Now again, the only way that I could get this to show up was that I had to do the appearance to get it to show up. Hold on. Sorry about that. I had to get my charger. Okay, so we were able to affect this because we created a custom class that we attached to this slider, and then with our style sheet, we actually did that. And we had to do the appearance of none and all of these things. You could try playing around with this by actually using the style one and doing appearance, none, and all of those things, and doing it without using CSS. That's okay too. I encourage you to try to do that. You should be able to try to control these. Okay, let's go ahead and do a button. Let btn, we'll create a button. btn is create button, and normally with button we have the text. Okay, now again we can do the same thing, but normally buttons have a event listener attached to them, and that's the mouse pressed. Okay, with the mouse pressed, what do we want to do? We want to do something, so maybe we call it move shape, and then we need to create a shape, or create a function. So in this one, we need to make sure that that matches. So we can call a function that we have it do something. So in order to have something happen, I'm going to go ahead and create a quick custom object. So let's call it a ball. And this ball is going to have an x. So let's do width divided by 2. It's going to have a y, height divided by 2. It's going to have a display. Which is going to be, we'll do a red ball. So fill 25500. And it's going to be a circle. Circle at this dot x, this dot y, and the size of 50. Okay, now this move shape needs to do something. So in this case, I'm going to write an update function, and I want it to change the position of the ball. Okay, so let's do this dot x is a random value all the way up to the width, and this dot y is a random value all the way up to the height. Okay. We've got to separate each attribute with commas. Let's tidy code. Okay, and then I'll just call this. So inside here, I can just call ball.update. And then we can draw ball.display. Okay. So now I push the button. Bump, 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 bump. Okay. So maybe I want to change this text to move ball. Okay. There we go. Looks beautiful. Okay, but let's make the custom shape for this button. Let's do some stuff. That text is really small. I don't like that button color. I want it to hover, so we can start adding different things. I can use this P5 element, and we've seen that there was different events that we could do. So we could attach variables to it. We could do different things. But why don't we do like mouse over and mouse out? Mouse over is when the mouse goes onto the element, and mouse out is when it comes off of it. So let's go ahead and create those and do something with them. So btn.mouse over, and then I can call something like, let's call it, how about hover button, hover btn. Okay, and I'm going to actually use the same mouse out. I'm going to use the same function for both of them. So let's create that hover effect. Okay, so hover button. All right, so let's first just console log. I ran, and I don't think we need to log this anymore. So Control/. Okay, I ran, came off. I ran 3 times. Look, 4 times when I come off it, 5 off. So it runs multiple times. Okay, so what we want to do is then let's look for what the button. And this time we'll use the style. I want to find the style of the background. Okay, so if I console log this, console.log that button style, let's see what it is when I hover over it. That is gray. Okay, this is giving me that style. Gray with padding and repeat and all that. Okay, so let's, we could actually do some code for it. If button style background, comma, that was RGB, 239, 239, 239. We could do some if statement with that. We want to maybe do some type of hover effect button. Let's see. I wonder if this returns true or false. So let's look at the mouse over. So if they're mousing over, we wanted to change the color, but then if they're mousing out, what's called once ever moves on an element, this can be used to attach an element-specific event listener. Function to be fired when the mouse moves on the element. If false is passed instead, the previously fired function will no longer fire. So that shuts off that value. Okay. So we could do this. We're going to have to add some type of variable here. We could have two separate functions, and that would make it easier to. But since we already started with this, we got button hover true, or we got some type of variable. So I'm going to use that, and we'll start it out when we first do our setup. Button hover true is false. Maybe button hover true is a little bit too much on the nose. So button hover false. Okay, and so then we could just do this. So if, let's take that off. If button hover is true, what do we want to do? Well, button dot style background, comma, so that this is where we want to transition back and forth. So if they're hovering the button, we want to first switch that hover button around. So btn hover is equal to, and we're just going to do like a switch like this, btn hover. So if it was true, then it's false. If it's false, it was true. So if it's true, we're hovering, then let's change that color. So our RGB, let's make it blue with white text. So 0 to 55. And btn dot style color is what you would use for text color. And let's just white. We can do that. Okay. If it's not that, so this would be else, what do we want? So I'm going to copy this. We want to put it back. So we already know that that was 239, 239, 239. And the text was going to be black. We could also, there we go, look. Beautiful, amazing. There's our hover effect. We put it back and forth. We found out what the original value was. That's how we knew to do this, by just putting style with the attribute and nothing in there to assign it. Okay, so we attached. We created a custom function that we linked to when we're mousing over and mousing out, and now it's effective. Okay, we can also do different things too. So let's pick another one. We're doing a color picker. Okay, so let's create a color picker. Color picker is equal to the create color picker. And then we can give it a default color. So we can say blue. All right, so if we look here, again, this is a P5 element. So we have all of those functions for it, but we want to do some stuff to it. Great color picker. Color picker, we can pull and pick colors. So you could do this maybe for custom menu selections, different types of stuff for that. Let's try to adjust the styling of that, okay? So if we style the color picker, let's try to change that background. Okay, so let's log that first. Console log.colorpicker.style, and let's put background. Let's see what we got. 239, 239, 239. All right, so we know it's that default color. Let's just make it maybe. How about red? Let's just be really ugly looking. RGB 255, comma, 0. Let's see. And this got to be in single quotes because we're putting it in as the CSS. There we go. That looks ugly. All right. Now let's set our color picker to update the ball. So color picker dot color. Oops. Got to create a custom attribute for this. How about color? And we can start it out as red. So color is 255, 0. There we go. We'll replace this with this dot color. And that's supposed to be a comma. Beautiful. Okay, now we update this dot color with the color picker dot color value. Okay, if I'm looking in the reference, it's color picker dot color. It's a function. Okay, when I'm looking here, that's what it returns is that color. Okay, so it does have a value. It will return the dot value, but that will return a hex string. Okay, there are a lot of different things that we can do when we want to try to customize or try to make some code, but we could say that we want to update. If I'm doing that update, then I need to make sure that that's, so just because I have it, it's not going to do anything. It's because I'm going to have to update in my draw, but knowing this, the way that I have this set up, it's going to move it to a random location too. But I can change that color. Okay, so if I didn't want that to happen, then I need to look at my function. This is update, how about update position? And then let's copy this. And we got to close it. And let's just update the color. So I'll make it event-based. And take off the color here. Okay, so this is update color and update position. So now we got two. And so down here, when I'm updating the color. And then with our mouse, the move shape, we are updating the position. Okay, so I have two different buttons. I click, I can move, I change the color, and now it is only changing the color when I'm pushing there. Bum, 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 bum. And I can change this. Okay, so we have created a custom slider, custom ball, color picker, and a text box. Okay, that is all delving deeper into the reference. You need to get used to doing this, going deeper and deeper in the reference. Okay, and then we're also matching that with W3 schools to try to do some searches and narrow down stuff that we're looking for. Okay. We do need to do one thing on Google Fonts. Okay. Now that you guys have seen how we can do the following DOM objects, okay, we need to make sure that they're all implemented correctly. DOM objects need to be positioned as follows. The button will be in the top left, slider in the top center, color picker in the top right. Okay, so you have to play around with the positioning of those. And then you guys need to add one additional CSS design that is not part of this video, okay? Something that we have not covered. So whether it's in this video or in class, you're gonna have to do something different. And you're gonna have to write what that is at the top of your sketch file. So up here, we're gonna go to the very top, very first line, You'll write a comment and you're going to say button, and then you're going to say what that is. I did this, okay? I need to see it, and you need to have some type of custom. So you're going to do that with the slider. You're going to do that with the color picker, okay? You need to have all three of those. You got to have more customization. Okay, now doing the Google font. Let's look at that. Let's see what we can find for font in P5.js. Let's see, text font. Okay, text font right here, Georgia. And then we can put text and we can write our stuff. Okay, so we can select a font by using text font. We could preload actual true type fonts in there, but I'm actually going to have you guys do it a different way with our fonts. So let's do it this way. So there are such things as Google fonts, which are web-safe fonts. So let's do that. So any of these fonts in here will be fonts that we can use. Now I can do fonts, hello world. Now I can see this in all kinds of different fonts. I can choose what type of fonts I want. Serif fonts I feel are pretty old, so we can take those off. I like, I'll probably do, let's take off sans serif. I want to find something that looks kind of like old computer program, I think. Well, actually, let's do this. Pacifico, that looks fine. That's different. Oh, there we go. Permanent marker. So I'm going to click on this one. This is showing me what all the different levels look like. Okay, so I want to select this style. Okay, now, over here, this is what I want. There's different ways that I can attach this, but I'm going to basically attach this into that CSS style sheet. Okay, I don't need to link it this way. This is not the way that I want to do it. I actually want to do it using the @import. Now, they are using a style tag, but we already have a CSS page, so I'm actually copying this whole thing in between the styles without copying the styles. And then this is the name of the font, okay? So this font family is what I'm going to implement for that text font, okay? So let's go back into my P5.js. I'm going to go to my style sheet. At the very top, I'm doing the @import. There we go. That is my font. It is implemented. Now I want to write it. So in my draw, let's put underneath everything text font, and I need to write this permanent marker. Let's write that. Paste. Okay, now text hello world, and let's give it a position. How about width divided by 2, height divided by 2, and that's all that we need. There it is. Let's do text size. I want it to be much bigger. Oh, so much bigger. 32. And I want to change the color. This is what's actually, I'm going to kind of introduce this because playing around with fill, I can do, let's do fill of 255. White, okay, and minus 50. Okay, I could do this with fill for now, and that works. But there are other ways that we could do it. But it's really, really easy for us to implement a font. We just went into our styles, we imported that Google Safe font. So that's easy for us to do for video game type stuff. What is the one that I used before? Type 2. There's some text ones that look like old-timey video games that I think are pretty cool. But there are so many that we could, yeah, this one, press start to P, that one right there. That one looks good. That looks kind of Zelda-esque. So yeah, this is way that we can do it. We can implement it with the text font. We just have to type the name, okay? And then we are typing our text. Sure that we're typing our code. There we go, okay? So in terms of what we needed to do, we do know how to display text using Google Font. These are affected by the UI elements. We have created those three. You got to do the positioning, and now your job is to add the additional features. I already went through ways that we can do it. You need to do different features. All right, good luck. Have fun.